Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's quick conversation with the FARM program. We are excited as we round out the year to introduce you formally to the newest FARM program area, which is FARM Biosecurity. Today, I'm actually joined by FARM team member Miquela Hanselman and then Dr. Danelle Bickett-Weddle, who are going to explain a little bit more about the components of this program area and what's to come down the road. Before we get started, just a reminder that the purpose of these is really for an opportunity for you to interact with us as staff and other subject matter experts that we bring on. So we really rely on you guys to add additional questions. If you have questions to ask for either of these folks, you can ask them through the Q&A box or the chat box over here on Zoom. And if you're watching on Facebook, you can just type your question into the comment period or comment section there at the bottom of the live stream. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just a reminder, one final reminder that this is recorded and it will be posted on our website next week. So with that, I'll turn it over and we'll go ahead and get started. Miquela and Danelle, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Great, thanks, Bev. So as Bev said, my name is Miquela Hanselman and I'm the Manager of Regulatory Affairs at the National Milk Producers Federation. And I've also kind of hopped onto the FARM team to help develop FARM Biosecurity.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Danelle Bickett-Weddle. I'm a veterinary consultant working on this project with National Milk Producers Federation as part of the Secure Milk Supply Plan, which you'll get to hear just a little bit more about. I was part of the development team when I was at Iowa State University.
Thanks. We're excited to have both of you guys as we round out and enter the holiday season, I guess. So to get us started, Miquela, maybe if you can just give us a brief overview of what is FARM Biosecurity.
Yep. So FARM Biosecurity is funded through a cooperative agreement with the USDA, and it's something the FARM program has wanted to do for a while. They actually put a manual together back in 2012. But didn't feel like the right time then. But it's really focused on providing dairy farmers with the tools to protect their employees and dairy cattle from the spread of disease. So it includes two different arms. The first is everyday biosecurity, and that really includes the everyday practices that dairy farmers should be doing to protect their animals from disease spread from the everyday diseases that they see on farms. And then there's enhanced biosecurity, which Danelle will talk a little bit more about, but that's focused on protecting dairy farms and getting them prepared for a foreign animal disease outbreak.
Perfect. And then Danelle, do you want to add on to that enhanced biosecurity piece, or maybe just explain to us, what are some examples of biosecurity that maybe we're not even thinking about?
Great question. So foot and mouth disease isn't something we've had in the United States since 1929. So a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, why are we worried, right? And I think as we've looked at our global movement, there's diseases that have come into the United States that have either put our animals at risk or latest with, COVID-19 pandemic, our humans at risk. So foot and mouth disease, it's not a public health or a food safety threat. It's a highly contagious disease of animals found in 2/3 of the countries of the world. And so we started this project with USDA funding back in 2009, looking at ways to try and make our dairy farms more resilient. How do we put some layers of protection in place to protect our cattle from becoming infected if this disease were ever to come to the United States? So Miquela, if you want to just advance, I think one of the bigger things we talk about is how do we protect that herd? And we haven't had to deal with a highly contagious disease before in the cattle industry, which is fantastic, right? Our partners on the swine side or the poultry side really have had some severe challenges over time. Well, if you haven't had to deal with that, you can be kind of unprepared. So that enhanced biosecurity approach is really kind of needed. And we recognize that our cattle are never going to be at zero risk, right? They're raised outside and there's things that we just deal with. So trying to make sure that we're doing the things we can every day will help get us prepared for that. Miquela, if you just want to advance one more time. So when we think about where do you get started, if you need to do something pretty drastic on enhanced biosecurity, like where are those first steps? So if people aren't doing things already, it's going to be a pretty big leap. So if you want to go to the next slide there, Miquela. we always want to talk about, big journeys begin with small steps. So looking at the person on the right-hand side, trying to reach up to that big first step, that's pretty tough. I'm only 5'2", so I get that, right? It's a pretty big leap. Whereas if we put some steps in place to help people get there, right? Little blocks, let's build on those. Let's try to get people, working towards those more advanced, enhanced biosecurity steps for a foot and mouth disease outbreak if it were to ever occur. That's really where farm biosecurity can play a big role.
Thanks. And then, Danelle, if you want to carry on and just share a little bit about what those topics would include all underneath the biosecurity umbrella.
You bet. So if you were to pick up some of the guidance that we have in the Secure Milk Supply Plan under enhanced biosecurities, you'll find a lot of these topics that you see listed on the screen. So really what we're trying to do is make sure that things that we're doing every day, which farmers are doing great jobs now, right? So how are they doing things to look at animal health and look for diseases? Some of those things are part of what the new FARM Biosecurity Program will have, and it's resources that already exist in the Secure Milk Supply Plan. But there's some nuances, right? Things that we do every day aren't going to be the same that we're going to do in an enhanced outbreak. And Miquela, if you want to share a little bit about some of those things, I think that'd be great.
You're on mute.
Yeah. So actually, this has been one of the most enjoyable, I think, processes for me when we've been writing the everyday manual, is kind of seeing like what's in the everyday manual and how a lot of it we actually already do on our farm. You just don't think of it as necessarily biosecurity practices. So it's like things like vaccinations, separating new animals, making sure you're using separate equipment for feed and manure handling, all of those small things that really prevent that spread of disease, or working with sick cows at the end of milking. Those really small things that protect your herd are going to make the biggest difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think if you guys wouldn't mind reiterating that a little bit about why it's so important when you talk about animal health and whatnot, that we consider biosecurity as something as an essential on-farm component.
So I guess one of the things I think about as we've been working on this, when you look at the animal care manual, there's a lot of references to things that build animal health, right? I mean, that's really what it's about at the end of the day. We want wholesome food reaching our consumers. That starts with healthy cattle, right? So our producers are doing all kinds of things today that are benefiting animal health. And some of those, like Miquela just shared, we fall under the biosecurity title. And so farm biosecurity giving kind of the overarching recognition for our farmers that are doing a lot of this stuff already, to be able to show, well, these are ways that we're putting protections in place for our calves or for our breeding heifers or for our lactating cows. And, overall, the bottom line is it benefits animal health. And when animals are healthy, they produce better, they reproduce better, right? The reproductive side is great. We know we've got to have pregnant cows to have more milk production, so all of those things kind of play in. But really the foundational aspects that are already in the animal care manual is what farm biosecurity gets to build on.
Yeah, those are great points. So, looking at this kind of full circle and the farm program being a quality assurance program and really trying to reassure our customers and consumers what's going on the farm and have those proof points for them. So I guess with that, is this something that dairy customers or consumers are concerned about? Is this something that they're interested in, have asked for, or what is the thought there with as far as customers and consumers?
In all the years I've worked on biosecurity, I don't get a lot of questions about it, right? It's the kind of insurance policy, right? Nobody necessarily thinks about it until a disaster happens, right? And so I don't think the average consumer is, sitting back wondering, oh, what are the biosecurity practices of our farm? I think they just really care about having milk on the shelves and cheese on the pizza, right? But how do we do that, right? We do it through making sure animals are healthy, and that falls under biosecurity. And I think if you had a conversation today in 2021, it'd be different than what you might have had in 2019, because the principles of biosecurity are things that our nation, our world have had to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. So, things that we have done for years to keep our cattle healthy were principles people were trying to put in place to try and keep people healthy when that pandemic hit. So I don't think by and large people sit and wonder about it. But I think overall, just knowing that people are doing really good things every day for animal health, farm biosecurity is going to be a way to document that and recognize it and show yet another reason why animal agriculture is doing such a great job raising, the safest food supply out there.
Miquela, can you speak a little bit from the farmer perspective? Will there be an on-farm evaluation specific to biosecurity like there are with several of the other farm programs?
No, there won't be. So farm program is kind of being handled, not the farm program, farm biosecurity is kind of being handled how antibiotic stewardship is. So we're working with our task force to develop some evaluation questions for biosecurity, which will be included in the farm version 5 of the animal care program. And these questions will really just help us gauge where we are as an industry with biosecurity and to kind of help you see how you're doing as a farm on biosecurity as well.
Just a reminder to folks, if you have questions, feel free to chat those in, and we'll probably have a few minutes at the end to take some of those. So if it's under the umbrella of farm animal care for the evaluation, what kind of additional ask are there going to be of farmers in that program, in that evaluation?
So technically, there will be no additional asks of farmers. So we really hope that farmers will want to put together an everyday or an enhanced biosecurity plan, and they'll really use the tools that we're providing them. But there will be no extra things that farmers have to do. It's all going to be voluntary and by their choice.
And then maybe can you guys speak to a little bit about what the deliverables are and what we're working on creating as far as resources specific to biosecurity?
Yep. So Danelle has been working hard on drafting an everyday biosecurity manual, and that is hopefully going to be out in the first quarter of next year. We also will have signs and posters available that farms can put up around, which is like biosecure area, visitors should check in, those kinds of things. We'll have forms that are an example of one is like a visitor log for farms to keep on hand so they can kind of track everything. And then there'll also be an everyday biosecurity checklist, which is kind of a counter piece to the manual, and it's kind of an overview of it's like, okay, am I doing this? Yep. Am I doing that? Yep. So it kind of simplifies things and makes it easier to look at. And then of course, an everyday biosecurity template as well. I also want to mention that enhanced biosecurity, which is the on-farm piece of the secure milk supply, all of those materials are already done and available on the secure milk supply website, and they're also linked through the farm website. So if you want to start working on an enhanced biosecurity plan now, the materials are available to do that.
And then can you share once those other materials are developed where they'll be located as well?
Yep, they'll all be on the FARM Biosecurity webpage, which is on the National Dairy Farm website.
And then you mentioned earlier about that this was a part of a grant. Can you guys speak to, are there additional deliverables related to that grant? What are the requirements? Is that some of those things that you outlined, will they be a part of that as well?
Yep, so there's a few other deliverables that I didn't discuss, which are a part of the grant. I think one of the coolest parts that is tied into the grant is that, so as most of you probably know, the farm program has a database, and when there's a foreign animal disease outbreak in the United States, the enhanced biosecurity plans for dairy farms somehow have to get to the state animal health officials so that they can issue a movement permit so that milk can keep moving on and off farms. And this could be a real issue because, as everyone knows, milk is perishable and has a tight window to get to the processing plant. So our hope is that by using the farm database, we can store those enhanced biosecurity plans for farms that have put them together. And then if there is a foreign animal disease outbreak, which we really hope there never is, but if there is, we can just transmit those plans to state animal health officials and hopefully speed up them issuing the movement permits to dairy farmers. The other thing we will be doing is a virtual exercise to kind of see if the database and this whole thing works effectively. And then really the last deliverable is just using the farm program's reach throughout the entire United States to really make it help prepare the dairy industry for a foreign animal disease outbreak and expand the reach of the secure milk supply program.
Yeah, and speaking of outbreaks, we know that, or we're aware that it's a risk for the swine industry that they may have African swine fever enter the U.S. here directly. Is that something that we should be concerned about in the dairy industry? Is it going to have an impact on the dairy industry?
Great question. So African swine fever is a swine-only disease, so it doesn't infect cattle, but anytime our partner industries are impacted, right? I think there's always that ripple effect. So African swine fever hasn't been diagnosed in the United States ever. The closest it's been diagnosed is in the Dominican Republic, which, that had happened back in the late 70s and early 80s and was eradicated and never made it to the US mainland. So we're, taking some really good precautions to try and protect our swine industry from that disease. If it were to enter the United States, anytime we have our partner commodity groups impacted, they all eat the same things, right? And so if we have, a disease like that, we sometimes wonder, well, what's going to happen to corn prices, right? So if we get a disease that impacts pigs, and African swine fever traditionally is pretty high death rates, and our swine population would decrease, what's that going to do to corn prices? We all know trade is a big deal, right? We look at it as $1 billion industry for our products that go overseas, and the swine industry will be impacted by that. Nobody will want our swine and swine products. So that goes onto the market as a potentially lower priced food source for Americans. That will definitely impact what people buy at the store. Dairy milk, right? We don't really have a big competitor on the swine side with that, but meat certainly is. And, every dairy cow, I think, has two career opportunities, right? One, she's a milking cow, and two, she becomes part of the beef industry. And of course, half of the animals that hit the ground are males and enter the beef industry as well. So there will definitely be ripple effects, even though our animals, our cattle, are not impacted directly from a disease like African swine fever. So all of those reasons, right, make it so important that, we're doing the things that we can to be part of the solution to keeping foreign animal diseases out of the United States, even if they don't directly impact cattle.
And that you mentioned that career change that dairy animals have, or even we know that beef on dairy has a significantly growing presence within the dairy industry. Is this program that we're creating here with Farm Biosecurity, is it specific to milk, or is it going to cover the dairy beef animals as well?
I'm going to let Miquela address a little bit of that too. From a biosecurity standpoint, the viruses that we deal with, or the bacteria we deal with, are not really particular as to, the gender of the cow, right? And so some of the biosecurity aspects would definitely apply, whether it's, a dairy that's, just lactating cattle, or maybe a dairy that raises their own, feeder cattle, or, has calves on farm. So the principles would apply regardless. And so it's definitely a whole farm biosecurity aspect. But when it comes to the milk piece of it, Miquela, you want to share a little bit about that approach and the virtual exercise?
Yeah, so for Farm Biosecurity, we really are just focused on the milk movement piece of it. It's a lot to focus on dairy, beef, and milk, but also we have the beef quality assurance program has the secure beef supply program as well. So they kind of take over the beef side of things, and we're focused on the milk.
Oh, you went on mute again.
That's it. That's all I had to say.
Okay. All right. Well, as we wrap things up today, Miquela, do you want to share one more time where folks can go to find out more information about the program as we build it out?
Yep. So as I mentioned before, you can go to the National Dairy Farm webpage, which is nationaldairyfarm.com. And there's a farm biosecurity page on that, which will take you to resources, which will also then take you onto this Care Milk Supply page if you do want to go and see those and the resources they have available as well.
Yeah. And as always, if you are a producer, please make sure to reach out to your farm evaluator at your farm program participant, to your co-op or processor. If you have questions about how your organization is participating in farm or how you can become more involved in the decision making or being aware of what's going on with us at the farm program. Again, this is recorded. It will be posted on our website with our other quick conversations. Thank you guys for tuning in. We hope that everyone has a safe holiday season, and we'll see you guys in the new year.